Hey guys, BassGeek here, and today I'm actually going to share with you a seminar I did for the Telico Fishing Club a couple weeks back. I've been behind in getting some videos out to you, getting some content out to you, but I can assure you we're not going to fall by the wayside. We got some really good buyer's guides coming out. Going to do those a little bit different. Going to talk about the combos in 2021 that really played a big part in my season. We're going to talk about the terminal tackle and tools that played a big part in my season. We're going to talk about the baits that played a big part, and so we'll break those down into a few different videos so that you guys can go out and try and find these things during the sale season. Those will be coming out real soon. The other thing is I've been in South Carolina all week filming some videos, filming some fishing videos with my good buddy, as I call him, Mr. Madden, Joey Madden, and those will be coming out hopefully real soon. I just got back literally yesterday, had to go straight to work last night, so 3.5 hour drive, and then working a 12-hour shift all night long. Yeah, not a lot of time to edit videos, you know what I'm saying? So bear with me. It is Domiki time, and if so this is a perfect relatable video to right now. It is a seminar, so the good thing about it is you can put it up and just listen to it. And hopefully you guys will go out and give this a try. Now, by the way, happy Thanksgiving. Hope everybody has a good time, and I hope you guys find some really cool baits at some really good deals with these Black Friday sales. All right, here you go. My name is Hank Rogers. I'm from Southwest Virginia, just in a small town called Big Stone Gap. I've been fishing, probably bass fishing, since I was 6 years old. I literally caught my first 2 bass on back-to-back casts. With a antenna that my dad had fashioned off of his tractor and trailer, and who knows what kind of line, and it was just starting to rain, so immediately I understood that pre-front conditions mattered to bass. No, I'm kidding, I was 6, I didn't know that. But I want to talk to you guys about the Damiki Rig or moping. Now you guys, I'm sure already know, because if you wouldn't mind hitting that next slide, this gentleman right here just so happens to have won a Bassmaster Elite last year doing this exact presentation. Now this is something that my home lake is South Holston, so I have been doing this for several years now. I want to talk to you about the setup, the style, how you can adapt it like this gentleman did here on your lakes. And I want to tell you, it's not just a smallmouth catching presentation. Me and my friend Tim Saylor catch fish on chick. We catch largemouth with it. And of course you catch spots, which is just like a really mean smallmouth, of course. All right, go ahead and go to the next one. So we're going to start out, we're going to talk about what makes up a Damiki rig, or a Damiki rig. And really, a Damiki rig, what makes a Damiki rig so great, what really causes it to stand out from a drop shot, is that during the winter, when those shad, those first of the year shad begin to die off, they're up shallow, they start to fall. It's really a buffet for those fish. So you don't really fish this on the bottom at all times. This is something that you're dropping down and you're keeping above the fish. But this rig is actually made up, and I'm going to pass some of this around. Please, no blood. Some of these hooks are exposed. My favorite head is that head you'll see right there. That is the ledge head lure's head, and that is a very specific design. The key to that head is that most of the weight is on the keel, and that actually, when I'm fishing 30, 40, 50 foot, which is not uncommon, I was telling some of your members and my buddy over there, Josh, that I was catching them in 80 foot of water last last winter. But the key to that is you want to try and keep that bait as horizontal in the water. So a 90-degree line tie is key. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pass this. You guys just pass that around. That's my favorite head. Now,
what does 9% mean?
I'm sorry?
It's 90% or 90 degree? What's 90%?
90 degrees, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I'm from Southwest Virginia. I can't spell. So. I'm just a hillbilly. You know how it is. So a 90-degree line tie is key. And you'll see that as I'm passing this around. This is what the Bassmaster Elite gentleman wanted on. He was fishing 12 to 15 feet. Again, he was using a quarter ounce. So that head that I just passed around was a 3/4 ounce. That's my go-to weight. I'll fish that from 20 to about 50 feet down. I'll go to a 1/2 ounce based on the wind, the current, or if I'm past that 50 feet mark, of course. But there's several heads you can look at. These are some heads that are made. We call these the Erie Heads. The biggest thing is light wire hook, and then of course Domiki, who the rig is actually named after, makes their own heads too. But the key to that is they're all a 90-degree line tie. The baits that we use on them, the biggest key is when I'm fishing for smallmouth and in the fall and in the late or in the middle of the winter, of course you're looking at those small bait fish. Now that's going to change. If you go to a place that's got bigger shad, you know, like we'll say Chick or Fort Loudon, now you may want to go from something that is, you know, this size, that 3-inch size, to something that is, you know, slightly bigger to match that hatch. That's a 4-inch. You can even, at that point, throw a fluke on it. And you'll notice the big key, well, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but the big key is, even if you'll notice, you know, my hand is staying, I'm no surgeon, but you'll see the tail barely move. And that's one of the keys to that bait. It's subtle movement.
Do you use paddle?
Sorry?
Paddle tail?
You can use paddle tails, but you know what I do most of the time with a paddle tail? I'll actually tear the paddle tail off. I'll cut it off. Now there's we'll get into the progression of it as we go. Like I said, we covered size, color of the head and bait. You know, just keep it real simple. Some of my favorite colors, if I'm fishing around smallmouth, you know, it's going to be a shad color, you know, just a good old pearl white, some sort of translucent white. Smallmouth, of course, they hate that chartreuse, so, you know, the electric blue chartreuse. And then something on those low wind, high sun days, you know, really you can see hopefully how translucent and natural shad. I think that's the pro blue color there. I'll pass those around.
Do you use a different color when you're fishing really deep?
I will generally go to that more solid color. So it'll be the, you know, something that's going to be a little darker. Oh, I hate to tell you all about this because he don't make it anymore, but something with a little more solid. This is one of my favorite colors. It's really called a sour grape. But so that chartreuse blueback, electric blue chartreuse, will be, if I'm fishing real deep, that or the white, the straight white tends to be best.
Because it's less light down at 80 feet.
Yeah, exactly. So just a solid color, something that they're going to really see the outline, and 90% of the time that's just white. So, all right, go ahead and do the next
Can I ask
slide.
a quick question, Nate? You talked about 90-degree line tie. If you go back to that previous picture for just a second, you want that bait to hang horizontal,
Yeah, I've got that one a little bent up. That one will come after a really good day. So that one's beat up a little bit, but yeah, you want it as flat as you can get. And the way that it's setting isn't quite giving you the right angle of it. But you want it, and again, let's see if I can, right here, this is a little different version, but you can kind of see, you know, how that's setting on that head. And again, I'll pass that around too here in just a second, but I want to talk about that a little bit more later. The color of the head, I don't get too crazy about the color of the head. If it's a white, then I like to get it a white. A lot of times, my guy Ledgehead, he makes them in a single color. Domiki makes them in a single color, and it's that sort of gray. And if I really want to, I'll just take a white paint pen and color it white, or, you know, color it up to match whatever color that I'm putting on the bait at the time. The gray tends to be a good all-around color, but I don't get caught up too much in that. You know, I mean, as far as the head goes, as far as color goes on that. I really do think it's more about the color of the bait itself. All right, go ahead. Now, rod. This is something that in that picture right there was the beginning of a frustrating lesson. That was when one of the days I was first learning how to do this, and I had this, because you got to think, this is really, now for you guys, if you're fishing up shallow on Telico or on Loudon, you're that 20 foot or less, you can get away with a little softer tip rod, a little softer rod, but don't think about this like you think about the drop shot, because what you're going to do, this is a lose, this is a custom speed stick, it is a 7 foot medium, but it's an extra fast tip. And the reason why I want that tip is because if I'm dropping a 3/8 ounce head or a 1/2 ounce head on, you know, a medium tip, I've really got a ton of give. Now we're using light hooks, yes, with barely any barb, but what I discovered is when you drop that head down, you stop above that fish, he'll come up, take it, immediately turn down. When you set the hook, what does that smallmouth do? What does every smallmouth want to do first? Like a rocket, straight to the top. So I wanted an extra fast tip, because when they come up, the tip wasn't reacting fast enough, and apparently my reaction skills weren't fast enough. They would get slack, and that barb, because there's just no barb on those hooks, would just fall out of its mouth. You finally catch up and it'd just be gone. So I like that extra fast tip, so when they start to come and I'm leaning, it's keeping a little bit of, you know, pressure on that fish. I like a fast reel. You know, a lot of your, you know, I'm 47, so I know a lot of you guys know that a lot of your spinning reels, you couldn't get them in a 6-speed back in the day. They were all 5s or below. So, you know, I like a 6-speed as fast as I can get, because again, you want to catch up to that fish. You want to be able to keep pressure on that little tiny hook on that fish. Line, we talked about this during a great dinner, and I appreciate it. Generally, I'm going to fish 8-pound test line, fluorocarbon, and I'm going to put a ton of fluorocarbon, depending on the depth. I don't want, and it's hard to see, I do not want that fish to be looking up and 10 foot above the line that hopefully it ain't seeing, it sees a spaghetti noodle 40 foot up. You know, for me, they get really pressured, they get really picky. So generally, I'm going to use 8-pound. Now, I know guys that are using 4-pound tests doing this. I don't have the right features to be brave enough to do that. I'm not, it scares me, and you can catch some big old fish doing this. So, and you guys that have caught smallmouth, you know how aggressive they can be. So that's my rod and reel and line setup. And I will keep line treatment. I know some guys don't believe in line treatment, but when it's cold out there, fluorocarbon tends to love to loop up, and it especially loves to loop up on a spinning reel. Now, the good thing about this is you're not casting it, okay? So you're literally 2 foot over, you know, from the trolling motor, and you're just opening the bell and dropping beside the trolling motor, right in that cone angle. You're dropping it straight down beside it. You're stopping it 2-3 foot above the fish. A lot of times you can see them come up, and what you want to do is kind of time that right so that they come up, you stop it right before they get to it, and that's when they'll eat it. We'll talk about the presentations next. All right, you can go ahead and hit the... All right, presentations. Now, the biggest key is stay above the bass most of the time. How many of you guys, any of you guys ever ice fished? Anybody? Okay, so you'll know, and when you're ice fishing, what do if you've got a fish that's interested but not committed? You slowly work that fish up in the water column. The higher they get in the water column, the more likely they are to bite that bait. So, if you're fishing with artificials, of course. You do the same thing. Now, a lot of times they're going to drop. Early in the season, they are going to be aggressive. And when I say early in the season, and I meant to ask a question because I can't remember this. When the elite guy won, do you guys know roughly about what the water temperature was around that time? 44. I'm going to tell you, this bait, and I may be jumping ahead here, but this bait, one of my favorite times, and you're going to see it in, I think the next slide, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but you're going to see it. One of my favorite times to start fishing this bait is when the water temp hits 68 to 70 degrees. Because when a lot of bass, everybody thinks around that time they're going to run into the coves. Not every bass does that. If there's a good amount of shad out on the points deeper, they will stay there. They don't need to leave. So those fish will stay there. They will feed up for the fall, and they'll stay there all winter long. And most of my bigger bags have come at that time of year when nobody else is doing this. Now, smallmouth, the presentations I like to use with smallmouth, I like to stay above the fish. So like I said, I'm going to drop it down. You're not going to see me hopping. I do not want to move. I want that bait to sit there and move as little as possible. I will even pay attention to the wave action on the water and try to mimic it. So if a boat goes by and I'm lifting, I'm going to drop that. I want it to stay as still as I can, because just like I showed you earlier, the tail action is what gets the trigger. It's kind of like fishing the TRD, the Ned rig. The least amount of action you can give it, the better off you are. If they come up, you want to slightly move the bait up. If they come up and sit there, every once in a while, give it a good crank or two of the reel, stop it, see if they come up. If it keeps coming up, work that fish up in the water column. Sometimes I've caught them dropping it down past them, just letting it dart down and stop it. But 90% of the time, it's working them higher and higher in the water column that gets them to bite. If they're just not so aggressive when they see it dropping, you know, I have seen them where I've dropped it and it looks like a hand on the sonar, just lines coming up, and you're just like, oh, this is going to be a good time, you know. Largemouth are different. Largemouth, for whatever reason, once it starts to get cold, they love to sit with their belly on the bottom. And every time I've caught largemouth in the wintertime, it has been with that bait on the bottom. I will drop it down, let it sit there, suddenly you'll raise up, and all of a sudden the weight is there. And they're just not going to fight. That fish right there was almost 5 pounds, and I thought it was literally a wet t-shirt when I first hooked it. I was like, is this a fish? You know, they're not like smallmouth. Smallmouth are gonna let you know, but when the largemouth get cold, they're not gonna fight. They're gonna bring up, and when you bring them up that fast, I don't know how many of you guys know how to fizz, or if you use fin clips, get them back in the water as fast as you can, or fizz them or fin clip them, leave them in there as long as you can until they right themselves. Fish care is huge with this, especially when you're out deep. Now, if you're down here, probably going to be less of a problem, especially in the cold water, as opposed to ledge fishing during the summer months. The cold water doesn't affect them nearly as bad. You know, like I said, keep them moving. It just goes back to keep them moving up in the water column. All right, go ahead. Now, the places that you want to find ditches. You know, for you guys, ditches can be a little bit different, but ditches, you know, long points, humps, you know, your basic areas where you're going to find fish that congregate. You know, I know that the elite guy, he caught them around rock, you know.
In a channel.
Yeah, in a channel, a bottleneck sort of area. And, you know, he caught them right before really the water started warming up and before they go into pre-spawn. When they start to feed, that's a big key. You know, summertime and wintertime really mimic each other. It's just opposite temperatures. When I love to ledge fish, and so you guys know when they first move out on the ledges, you can throw about anything to catch them, right? Then as the summer gets hot, they start seeing all these baits, it's tough. Then as they start, right before they start to move, you'll start to catch a few of them again. It's kind of the same way with this. You'll catch them better at the first than at the end, and at least that's when I've had my most success. You know, chunk rocks, boulders, humps, if you can find those same areas, you hear northern anglers talk about smallmouth a whole lot, you know, throwing around those isolated boulders. You know, if we can find that chunk rock line, that area where it comes out, even if you don't see them on the graph, you can see them, you know, a lot of times you can call them up out of that rock. All right. And I just wanted to show you, you know, a couple of different places where I've caught them. You know, a lot of times I tell people when you're first learning this technique, this is inactive fish to me. These fish are going to be hard to catch. Yes, you can catch them. But if I drop on these fish and they don't come up, I'm leaving. I'm not staying there a long time. We all hear about spaghetti. Those fish are going to eat. You drop down on top of those fish, they're going to eat. This is a couple of spots from South Holston. You can actually see, what you can't see is there's a big ball of shad right here. Here's a fish chasing shad. You've got bass all along the bottom. Some of them were active and some of them weren't. I caught some fish there. This group is a group of largemouth, and they were active. You know, I don't know how many of you guys are really proficient with graphs. I'm actually a network engineer, Cisco network engineer, so I'm a computer geek, hence the BassGeek name. So graphs are something that's kind of common for me. I enjoy fishing them. All right, good. At the end, I thought I had one more in there. I forgot my favorite slide. Anyway, but that's really, that's really the basis of it. Now, there is one thing I want to tell you about. How many of you guys have the forward-facing sonar now, the Garmin or the Lowrance? All right. So on South Holston, where I do this a lot, it's a very common thing. It's got very tough. Used to be able to come out, graph the fish on the bottom, and catch them. Well, they're so pressured now that those fish that you're seeing on that graph, they've become almost impossible to catch. But the guys that are winning tournaments on South Holston are still Damiki Rig. What they're doing is they're targeting active bass, and I don't have a picture of this because I work with Humminbird, And I've tried to get on with hummingbirds for a long time, and I'm trying not to make them mad by going out and buying a Garmin. So, so I'm waiting on their stuff to come out, so I don't have the Ford, but I do have several buddies that do. And what they've shown me is that they are going out and they're finding in those same areas that we're catching fish, where those large schools of shad are, those fish are literally inside the balls of shad. You can literally pull up, shine that thing over, and if you're in the right position, it'll almost open up like a hole. Now, if they knew I was telling y'all this, I'm not kidding you, I'd be killed up there right now, okay? I mean, I'm not kidding. You can open, it literally opens up and you'll see the dots inside with the shad all the way around. So what you do is, how many of you guys have heard of Tightline? Okay, so it's almost become a hybrid between Tightline and Damiki Rig. So you don't necessarily drop it straight down on them. You see them out there maybe 10 or 20 feet. And one of the things that we like to do, this is what's called the drop head bling. And so you'll take it and you'll literally just pitch it out and let it tightline down through that school, and they'll come up and clock these. So you're just holding it tight, letting it pendulum back, and there you have it. Or you can let it drop straight through if they're a little bit deeper, of course. I'll pass that around too. That is kind of the be-all end-all. That's kind of the progression, because I've just seen so many on that lake in particular, Damiki rigs, that they probably tell you the serial number and what brand you're fishing with. So, I'm not kidding. I took him out. This is my buddy Josh over here. He does a YouTube channel too. Took him and his two cousins out. Had been killing them. It was a one day. It had been really cold. We went out every single point and hump on South Holston. Had three guys sitting there going ding, 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 and I was like, we just might as well go on. I was like, it's bad. All right, that's it, guys. Fire away.
Where can you buy the very first one you showed us? Where can you buy that?
The Ledgehead, it's ledgehead.com. I do have, and I think it's just BassGeek, all one word, but you'll get 10% off of that. But I think it's BassGeek. If you put that in their code, you'll at least save shipping.
Any local stores, no?
I think Bucks and Bass carries them, which is a little more toward that way. I know Michael Neal's store. What is the name of that store that carries them? They carry them. So I don't know about the local stores exactly, as far as he goes. Anything else?
So it's critical that you're the guy in the front of the boat that's doing this. If you're in the back of the boat,
It's
kill
tough.
the guy in the front of the boat in order to make this work.
You can be in the back of the boat. What I'd recommend is try not to knock each other out. But if he's over top of them, yeah, you can drop. I get two guys, and I'm a pretty big guy, and I've got a TR20, 98, which is real skinny. So I can fit me and another guy on the front of it. But yeah, it does help to be able to see it. It really does help to be able to see it. Anything else?
How about the water temperature range you were saying again?
When I like to start doing it is when it gets about 68 degrees.
So cooling down.
Yeah, so cooling down, dropping.
Okay.
And then, you'll go through a period when they're feeding, they'll kind of stop, and then once those shad really start dying because of the cold weather, it'll pick back up in the super cold, later in the year once the temperatures get down really to about their lowest. So for us, most of the time, mid
68 on it.
In a clear water situation, what would you say would be about the shallowest? I mean, if you're going to be directly in top.
A clear water, now what are you calling clear water? 5 foot or better?
8 to 10.
8 to 10? I would say I would be very quiet. That's probably another thing, and a tip that I actually forgot to give you guys. One of the things that I've found is that a hydro wave can be very very important when you're doing this. 8 to 10, I'm probably looking at that 15-foot mark. You know, unless you can use that front-facing sonar and throw out to them and catch them that way.
That was good.
Yeah.
That's what I was leading.
But the hydro wave can play a huge part if you put it on shad, because your boat's kind of coming over top of them, especially in clear water. You know, you've got that shadow, but if they just think it's a big shadow from shad, a lot of times I've learned you'll get some better bites that way. All right.
I think we're the smallmouth on the first slide.
The smallmouth on the first slide, I don't remember how big each one were, but I want to say that bag, I could not call out a stupid little largemouth in that bag, but I want to say roughly they weigh 15, but I have caught 20-pound bags of smallmouth doing this. South Holston is a great smallmouth fisher. It does not get the credit that it deserves because it can be brutal, but traditionally it takes during the spring, and probably one of my other favorite bites on that lake is the little green worm bite. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that, but basically it's fishing for spawning smallmouth, and it will generally take 20 plus pounds of smallmouth to win about any tournament on that lake. It is a wonderful lake. I love it. Yes, sir.
Was that a walleye I saw on that picture on the right-hand side, one of those pictures? It looked like a walleye. You get them very often?
Oh, you know, no, I've not caught any walleye out of that lake. No, that's all
No,
small.
not that picture. One later. Where there's two.
Oh, down here?
Yeah.
No, that's a 5-pound, 24-inch smallmouth.
That's a smallmouth?
Yeah. And like I said, that fish was 5 pounds or 24 inches. I was like, what in the world? I've told some of my friends from up north, and they're like, that thing would be 9 pounds up here if it was 24 inches. I was like, can I bring it up and shove some of those gobies down in it?
Is all this on your website?
It is. Just if you do a search for BassGeek, my ugly mug will appear.
So this stuff's on there?
It's YouTube, yeah. I've got the, if you go to YouTube and you search how to fish a Damiki rig, I'm the top one there. And it's very, very, very in-depth video. Now some of the stuff, it's not updated because like I said, I don't have the forward-facing sonar, so you know I don't have that stuff on there yet, but we'll get there.
Anything else?
Anything else?
Would we be able to keep that PDF and send it out to the members?
Oh yeah. I'm sorry the PDF wasn't more in depth. You know, I just kind of used that to keep me on point. But. By the way, you know, I am super honored to be here. I appreciate you guys having me come up and talk to you, especially about this because this is one of my favorite ways to catch fish. So,
And to help Hank out, you haven't asked me to plug your BassGeek, but just to help him out, go to BassGeek and just subscribe to it.
yeah, hit that subscribe button.
You always hear that from those guys.
Yeah.
Subscribe.
Hit that subscribe button. I appreciate it.
Please do that for BassGeek.